The story begins with a new chapter in human history, when humanity successfully launches the satellite into space. Let's go! We have a let's and carry it on into the farthest reaches of the world. Wished it bon voyage. This satellite is designed to travel far beyond the known universe, powered entirely by solar energy. 40 years after its launch, we are introduced to a famous writer named Neil, who has just released his latest book. But something unexpected suddenly happens. A group of dogs suddenly storms the event and causes chaos. It's been 5 long years I've had a lucky trial. Sorry about this. And then we realize it was all just a dream. Neil is not a famous writer at all. In reality, he is just an ordinary middle school teacher with no achievements to his name, quietly living an unremarkable life. That same day, Neil accidentally meets one of the apartment residents who lives right above him, a woman named Catherine. She is the kind of woman many men admire. Not only does she have a successful career in broadcasting, but she is also known for being warm, friendly, and kind to everyone she speaks to. Yeah, like Facebook, yeah. That's a good one. Meanwhile, far beyond Earth, the satellite has now traveled outside the solar system. That is when something shocking happens. It collides with an unknown object that turns out to be a group of aliens from another galaxy. These beings are on a mission to search for advanced civilizations to form alliances in their quest to dominate the universe. Many civilizations have already been wiped out because they were judged unworthy of survival. After discovering life on Earth, the aliens begin debating whether humanity deserves to live or should be destroyed. One of them strongly argues that humans are foolish and disgusting creatures who should be eliminated. Another, however, believes humanity deserves a chance. In the end, they agree to choose one human to represent the entire planet. This person will decide Earth's fate. The aliens possess a limitless source of power, capable of creating absolutely anything. If the chosen human uses this power wisely and brings positive change to the world, Earth will be spared. If not, it will be destroyed without hesitation. For 10 days, this human will be granted unlimited power. That person turns out to be Neil. He becomes the chosen representative of all humanity. At that moment, Neil is on his way to school when he is accidentally hit by a car and knocked to the ground. It is at that exact moment that the power is transferred to him through his right hand. And just like that, everything changes. This is absolutely anything. Unaware of what has happened, Neil continues to school, arriving late and getting scolded by the principal. Idle, and you're feckless. He then faces his chaotic and difficult students, who are known for being hard to control. Among the teachers is Ray, a biology teacher, and the only friend Neil truly has. Just like Neil, Ray is often ignored and underestimated by the other staff members at the school. While the two of them are having lunch, Ray casually asks what Neil would wish for if he could make anything come true. Without thinking much, Neil casually moves his right hand and says he wants his dog to throw up the full 3rd chapter of his writing, and for an alien spaceship to destroy his classroom full of troublesome students. Moments later, Neil is completely shocked when his classroom actually gets destroyed by an alien ship, something he never truly believed would happen. When he gets home, he finds his dog has made a mess on the floor. Without realizing what he is doing, Neil casually wishes for the mess to clean itself up. As he moves his right hand, the mess suddenly comes to life and slides straight into the toilet on its own. Neil can hardly believe what he just witnessed. He quickly grabs a drink to calm himself down, and that is when it finally hits him. His dog really did throw up the exact chapter he had written earlier. When his drink accidentally spills, Neil decides to test it again by wishing the liquid would return to the bottle. At first, nothing happens because he does not move his hand, but once he waves his right hand, it works. That is when Neil fully realizes the truth about his power. He starts making small, pointless wishes, like replacing the bottle with an expensive one filled with high-quality alcohol. The bottle immediately moves on its own and heads toward a luxury liquor store. Trouble begins when the store alarm goes off and Neil is mistaken for a thief. A chase breaks out between him and a police officer. When Neil trips and finds himself cornered, he quickly makes another wish to be sent home so he can have dinner with his dog. In an instant, he is back at home, only to realize he is eating dog food, which completely disgusts him. While brushing his teeth to get rid of the taste, Neil suddenly remembers his misbehaving students who were killed by the alien attack. In a moment of panic, he wishes for everyone who died to come back to life. What follows is pure chaos, as the dead across the world rise from their graves. Realizing the horror he has caused, Neil quickly cancels the wish and replaces it with a new one, sending himself back to lunchtime with Ray. Do anything. I don't know if I could just wave my hand and say such and such and it would happen. Well, the story then shifts to Catherine, who is approached by Grant, a military colonel who has been pursuing her for a long time. From the beginning, Catherine clearly shows that she has no interest in him and tries to turn him down gently. Back with Neil, he walks into class while the students are being noisy and out of control. Using his unlimited power, he wishes for them to become polite, respectful, and well-behaved. The result goes far beyond what he expected. The students become almost robotic, overly obedient, and completely expressionless. They even seem excited when Neil assigns them reading tasks. Seeing this, Neil tries something else. He wishes for the strict and harsh principal to become kind and friendly to everyone. The result is almost unsettling, as the principal becomes overly warm and overly nice toward him. After dealing with his own personal mess, Neil turns his attention to helping Ray, who is often ignored by the gym teacher, Miss Pringle. She is far more interested in the math teacher and barely acknowledges Ray at all. Without asking for permission or thinking things through, Neil makes a wish that Miss Pringle would not only like Ray, but obsessively admire him. And just like that, she becomes completely fixated on him. On his way home from school, Neil continues to experiment with his powers. Out of curiosity, he casually wishes to become the President of the United States. At first it seems impossible, but suddenly a limousine appears, followed by a presidential security team that rushes him inside the vehicle. What follows is pure chaos. Neil finds himself in a high-risk situation as security forces try to protect him from incoming threats. He is even forced to sign important documents while taking cover from gunfire. Overwhelmed and terrified, Neil quickly cancels the wish before things spiral further out of control. Still curious about his abilities, Neil looks at himself in the mirror and wishes for a strong and muscular body like a jaguar. Instantly, his body transforms into a toned and powerful figure. But his curiosity does not stop there. He experiments again and accidentally makes the floor transparent. This causes Catherine to scream in shock, since Neil can suddenly see into her apartment below while she is ironing clothes in minimal clothing. After realizing that none of his wishes ever seem to end well, Neil decides to be honest with Ray and finally tells him the truth about his powers. Ray, however, assumes Neil is drunk and does not believe a word of it. To prove himself, Neil brings a decorative skeleton to life right in front of him. Still unconvinced, Ray asks Neil to fill the entire room with flowers. Instantly, the classroom overflows with them. I could swear it was the skeleton talking. Yeah, it was. Bunch of flowers in my hand. What's this? At that moment, the usually angry principal walks in, but instead of yelling, he suddenly becomes unusually warm and friendly toward Neil. That is when Ray finally believes him. However, instead of using this power wisely, Ray becomes greedy and asks to win every horse race in the world. After countless victories and piles of money, both of them grow bored, realizing there is no challenge left. Meanwhile, Catherine is once again bothered by Grant, who now tries to impress her by showing off a sports car. He even claims to have bought a luxury apartment just for the two of them. Although Catherine rejects him, Grant still gives her the key, hoping she might change her mind. Here's the key. When Catherine arrives home, she vents her frustration to her close friend about Grant's constant interference in her life. Her friend suggests that having a boyfriend might finally make him back off, and the man Catherine secretly likes turns out to be Neil.
That night, without Neil realizing it, his power suddenly begins to malfunction and becomes unusable. At the same time, he starts thinking about his deepest wish, to be in a real relationship with Catherine. Without hesitation, he wishes for her to come to him and to feel the same way about him. What he does not realize is that Catherine shows up not because of his power, but because she has genuinely liked him for a long time. When she finally meets him that night, she immediately kisses him. The next morning, Neil wakes up to find that his powers are working again. He begins using them to make his life easier, having his clothes dress him automatically, and even making his utensils and books move on their own. Everything feels effortless and under control. The only problem is Dennis, his dog, who keeps barking nonstop. Using his power, Neil gives Dennis the ability to speak. It turns out Dennis has been craving the biscuits Neil gives him every morning. He admits he is addicted to them, and that craving is the reason he never stops barking. Neil considers removing that desire, But Dennis explains that desire is what makes him feel alive. Without it, life would have no meaning. Not long after, Catherine comes over and officially becomes Neil's girlfriend. But trouble quickly follows. Dennis, now able to speak freely, suddenly blurts out how much he loves Neil for his kindness. Catherine hears this and assumes the voice belongs to another man. She believes Neil is hiding something and assumes he is attracted to men. Hurt and confused, she immediately leaves him.
I love you, Neil! Shut up, Dennis!
Why do I always end up with creeps?
I'm not creeped.
I thought I told you to shut up.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
The situation could have been easily fixed, but Neil panics and makes everything worse. Instead of thinking clearly, he creates more chaos, even ending up jumping onto a moving bus and getting stuck.
I don't mean on the bus, I mean in the bus. The engine and the passenger are coming.
After finally freeing himself, he runs off to chase Catherine. At the same time, Ray finds himself in serious trouble at school. Miss Pringle no longer just admires him. She begins worshiping him like a god.
Oh, Lord!
Oh, Lord!
This happens because of Neil's earlier wish that went too far. It was meant to inspire admiration, not blind devotion. As a result, Ray becomes surrounded by fanatical followers who treat him like a divine figure. By coincidence, Neil and Ray cross paths on the street. To escape Miss Pringle and her followers, Neil quickly turns Ray into a sausage. Once they are safe, Neil turns him back into a human again. Later that afternoon, as Catherine returns home from work, she is once again confronted by Grant, who has somehow already made his way into her apartment. Realizing that Catherine is in trouble, Neil steps in and offers her a safe place at his apartment for dinner.
She's coming to dinner.
Oh, the bitch.
Don't call her that.
Hi, has he gone?
No, I don't think so.
As the two of them begin to reconnect, Grant suddenly smashes through the window, holding a gun and trying to intimidate Neil. But with limitless power in his hands, Neil calmly challenges him. Catherine, unable to stop what is happening, leaves in fear as the two men clash. Not long after she leaves, Grant attempts to strangle Neil, but Neil easily overpowers him and teaches him a painful lesson by throwing him around the room. Once he feels Grant has learned enough, Neil calmly explains how his power works, hoping it will stop him from causing further trouble. Instead, Grant takes advantage of the moment and knocks Neil unconscious from behind.
Great. I love you. I love you so much.
Dennis,
Shut
keep
up.
it.
Stop.
Neil wakes up tied inside the apartment Grant had bought for Catherine. His mouth is sealed and his right hand is trapped inside a glass box, making it nearly impossible for him to speak or move freely. Dennis is also threatened, with Grant warning that the dog will be shot if Neil resists. Grant then writes down a list of wishes he has always dreamed of. Most of them are ridiculous, like making everyone in England have big ears or forcing police officers to wear pink uniforms. After that, Neil is forced to fulfill more serious demands, including creating massive amounts of pure gold worth a fortune. Meanwhile, Catherine grows increasingly worried about Neil and unexpectedly runs into Ray, who is hiding from his own followers. She remembers the apartment key Grant once gave her, and together they rush there to save Neil. Along the way, they run into Miss Pringle and her fanatical followers, who immediately begin chasing Ray. They arrive just in time, as Neil is about to complete Grant's final request, forcing Catherine to fall deeply in love with him. With Dennis's life being threatened, Neil has no choice but to comply.
I love you. Please, please.
However, the moment Grant lets his guard down, Neil turns him into a dog and restores Miss Pringle and her followers back to normal.
Oh, no. Don't think about Ray the way that you used to.
Get lost, you creep!
After everything settles, Catherine decides to end her relationship with Neil. She cannot live in a world shaped by lies and unnatural power. Neil accepts her decision and chooses not to change it using his abilities. Through everything that has happened, Neil finally realizes how selfish he has been, focusing only on personal desires while ignoring far greater problems like war, hunger, and climate change. He tries to fix these issues but soon understands that every wish carries consequences he cannot control. But after that, he starts watching the news, and he is shocked to realize that everything he wished for has actually brought disaster. New viruses begin to appear, conflicts break out across different countries, and what was once peace slowly turns into war. In the end, Neil accepts that humans are flawed and never meant to hold such power. To prevent more harm, he gives his power to Dennis. Surprisingly, Dennis uses it wisely. Just as the aliens prepare to destroy Earth, Dennis wishes for the power itself to disappear forever. The attack meant for Earth turns back on the aliens, wiping them out instead.
Destruction generator already charged.
Commencing destruction.
Let the source of that power be destroyed.
Everything resets to the beginning, with Neil waking up as if nothing ever happened. His powers are gone, but this time he relies on himself to ask Catherine out for dinner. And to his surprise, Catherine accepts his invitation, and in the end, they finally come together. Meanwhile, when it comes to Grant, his fate remains the same, forever trapped in the body of a dog. At the very least, he now has Dennis by his side, a loyal companion who will stay with him until the end. So the moral of the story is, if you cannot even handle your own life, maybe you should not be trusted with God-level powers. The story opens with the voice of a writer explaining how, throughout history, many Americans were known to be tough, individualistic, and quick to destroy anything they saw as a threat. Then we jump to a quiet afternoon in 1892, in the New Mexico Territory before it officially became a state. A woman named Rosalie, an immigrant making a new life with her family, suddenly faces a nightmare. A group of native warriors attacks their home without warning. Her husband urges her to run and protect their 3 children. She does, but the tragedy unfolds too fast. Her husband is killed, scalped right in front of her and the children.
Run!
Lucy, give me Jacob.
Moments later, the attackers continue firing, and her children are taken too, including the baby in her arms. Covered in blood and grief, Rosalie flees into the woods and hides under a fallen tree trunk, clutching her lifeless baby. The attackers eventually ride off, unaware she survived. Out of her entire family, only Rosalie is left alive. In that moment, the world showed how cruel survival could be. This is Hostiles. Meanwhile, at Fort Berenger, we meet Captain Joseph Blocker, a veteran U.S. Army officer who has spent decades capturing Native people and fighting in violent conflicts across the West.
It's got to be about the end of them, man.
It ought not to be this way, Joe.
Is there a better way, Tolan?
As retirement approaches, he receives one final assignment directly from President Benjamin Harrison. He must escort a Cheyenne war chief named Yellowhawk, along with his family, back to their homeland in Montana. They have been imprisoned for 7 years and are now being released. The group includes Yellowhawk's son Blackhawk, his wife Elkwoman, their young son Little Bear, and Yellowhawk's daughter Living Woman. Colonel Biggs explains that Joseph was chosen because he speaks the language, understands native territory, and knows the route to a place known as Bear Valley in Montana. Yellowhawk is gravely ill with cancer, and returning him home is meant to improve the government's image in the eyes of Native nations. 2 years earlier, a horrific event called the Wounded Knee Massacre left more than 250 Native men, women, and children dead. This release is meant to soften public perception, not because of compassion. Joseph refuses at first. He has every reason to. 16 years earlier, he fought against Yellowhawk in battle and watched many of his fellow soldiers die brutally. He still carries deep resentment and trauma from that war, but the order is official and comes from the president. If he refuses, he will lose his pension and possibly face punishment.
This will be done, and it will be done by you.
Realizing he has no choice, Joseph prepares for the journey north. He selects trusted men including Sergeant Metz, Corporal Woodson, Lieutenant Kidder, and Private Desjardins. The colonel hands him documents proving the government's authorization, something he will likely need along the way. Once the group is outfitted, armed, and ready, they take a final photograph together.
Colonel.
Their long and uncertain journey begins. From New Mexico to Montana, more than 2,000 miles of unpredictable wilderness lie ahead. As the journey continues, Joseph orders Woodson to confiscate the belongings of Yellowhawk and his family. He also puts shackles on Yellowhawk and his son Blackhawk to prevent any attempt at escape. After a night of camping, the group moves forward the next morning. Along the way, they come across the burned remains of Rosalie's home. From the arrow lodged in her husband's body, Joseph immediately recognizes the attackers as Comanche.
Comanche.
Inside the destroyed house, they find Rosalie in a heartbreaking state. Her mind is lost in shock and grief. She treats her children's lifeless bodies as if they are merely sleeping. Slowly, Joseph manages to guide her away from the ruins and brings her to camp. But when she notices Yellowhawk's family nearby, the trauma hits her again. To her, all native people look like the ones who destroyed her world.
No, they ain't gonna harm you. They ain't gonna harm you.
Rosalie refuses to let the soldiers bury her family. She insists on doing it herself as her final farewell. Only after releasing all her bottled grief does she finally allow the others to help her. When the burial is complete, she quietly asks Joseph to bury her beside them if she dies along the way. Yellowhawk's family expresses compassion by lending Rosalie clean clothes, but later that night, overwhelmed by despair, she nearly ends her own life. Joseph stops her just in time. The next morning, Yellowhawk shares something important with Joseph. The Comanches should be confined to their reservation in Oklahoma, but many still roam freely and can be extremely dangerous. As a Cheyenne war chief, he knows firsthand how ruthless they can be. He offers his help in case of another attack, but Joseph refuses to unshackle him. The group continues across wide plains and rolling hills. Then out of nowhere, distant gunfire echoes, and Desjardins is hit. Comanche warriors rush in from both sides, surrounding them. A fierce battle breaks out. Yellowhawk and Blackhawk, still restrained, find a way to fight alongside the soldiers. The group manages to push back the attackers, but the cost is high. Desjardins doesn't survive the wound, and Woodson is severely injured. The remaining Comanche flee. Overwhelmed with rage and grief, Rosalie fires her entire weapon into one of the dead attackers, remembering everything she had lost. Woodson clings to life, and Rosalie tends to him, while the group transports Desjardins' body to be buried later. Seeing their willingness to fight alongside the group, Joseph finally removes the shackles from Yellowhawk and Blackhawk. He makes it clear that if they turn against them, he will not hesitate to kill them. As they travel, Joseph and Rosalie share quiet conversations about faith and survival, something they both desperately need during a trip filled with death and danger. The terrain grows harsher. Mountains, valleys, rivers, and long stretches of empty land test their endurance.
They eventually camp in the desert. During the night, while taking turns watching over the group, Metz reflects on his time as a soldier. Even after countless battles, he admits that losing comrades never gets easier. The death of Desjardins weighs heavily on him. The next morning, the group makes a grim discovery. The 3 Comanche warriors who escaped the previous attack are now dead. It becomes clear that Yellowhawk and Blackhawk tracked them down during the night and finished what the battle started. With that, it seems there may no longer be any Comanche roaming the area, since most should have been confined to reservation land. The journey continues for many long miles until they finally reach Fort Winslow in Colorado. There, the group finally lays Desjardins to rest. Later that evening, Joseph shares dinner with Colonel Ross, his wife, and Rosalie. During the meal, Joseph encourages Rosalie to stay behind where it would be safer, but she refuses. She chooses to continue traveling with the group, unwilling to separate from the people who have helped her survive this far. Before they leave, Colonel Ross asks Joseph to take an additional prisoner with him. The man is Captain Tolan, a soldier sentenced to execution for killing Native families outside of battle. Joseph reluctantly agrees, since their route to Montana passes near the fort where Tolan is to be delivered. Ross also assigns 2 new soldiers to join the journey, replacing Desjardins, who has been buried, and Woodson, who must remain at the fort to recover. You were taking a prisoner to Fort Pierce. An honor to meet you, sir. Not long after resuming the journey, the group faces another threat. While cleaning dishes at a riverside, Rosalie, Elk Woman, and Living Woman are suddenly taken by a gang of men. Little Bear manages to escape and alerts the others. Joseph and the rest quickly track the kidnappers back to their hideout. When the moment is right, Yellowhawk insists on leading the rescue. You're making all the noise out here. We can have stuff. Of course. Determined to protect his family, the group launches a swift attack. The kidnappers are defeated and the captives are freed. But victory comes with another loss. One of Joseph's soldiers is killed during the rescue, and the group buries him the following morning. Once the danger passes, the truth about what happened becomes even more painful. The kidnappers did not just abduct the women, they abused Rosalie and Yellowhawk's family, leaving deep emotional wounds. Rosalie's fragile state grows even heavier under the weight of what she endured. I can ride. Yes, ma'am. Meanwhile, Captain Tolan begins trying to manipulate Joseph. He argues that he should be forgiven, reminding Joseph that they both fought in the same war. He claims that punishing him is unfair because many soldiers, including Joseph, have taken native lives. But Joseph is unmoved. He knows Tolan's execution is for murders committed outside of war, not for battlefield actions. Better put him back on the tree, sir. Yeah, that's yours. As the group travels farther, a storm rolls in and rain floods the campsite. That night, Joseph chains Captain Tolan to a tree, leaving him exposed to the freezing storm, a silent reminder that his crimes will not be forgotten. As the night wears on, the group tries to rest, but tensions remain. Metz takes a quiet step toward peace by offering tobacco to Yellowhawk, a small but meaningful gesture of apology for everything America has done to his people. Not far from them, Kidder tries to show a bit of kindness as well. He gives Captain Tolan a drink and briefly removes his shackles. That small moment of trust becomes a fatal mistake. Tolan suddenly lunges, grabs Kidder's weapon, and shoots him. The camp erupts in chaos. Don't shoot! Joseph fires back and wounds Tolan, but the prisoner slips into the darkness. Joseph orders everyone to hold their ground, convinced Tolan will die from blood loss. But Metz, overwhelmed with grief and rage, ignores him and runs into the night to chase him down. Morning brings a mix of calm and heartbreak. Young Little Bear gives Yellowhawk a quail egg, a symbolic gesture to keep his strength as they continue toward Montana. But just a short distance away, the group discovers two lifeless bodies. Tolan is dead, as expected, but beside him lies Metz. The cost of vengeance is now painfully clear. Joseph breaks down. In such a short time, he has lost too many loyal men. What was supposed to be a simple escort mission has turned into something far more tragic and unpredictable. Yellowhawk's condition worsens as his illness advances, and Rosalie stays close, offering whatever help she can. Along the way, the journey reveals a hard truth. An ally can become an enemy, and an enemy can become a friend. In war and survival, lines blur, and nothing is as simple as loyalty and hate. Eventually, the mountains ahead signal they are close to their destination. Montana is finally within reach. Joseph reflects on his years of conflict with the tribes and the countless lives taken. Yellowhawk understands that burden as well. He reminds Joseph that death is part of life's cycle, something no one can escape. After everything they have endured together, Joseph's heart begins to shift. He forgives Yellowhawk and finally sees him as more than a former enemy. He sees him as a man who has suffered the same wounds, the same losses. After days of traveling deeper into Montana, the group reaches Bear Valley. After 7 long years, Yellowhawk is home. With peace finally surrounding him, he takes his last breath. The Cheyenne hold a ceremony to honor their fallen leader. But the peace does not last long. A rancher and his men appear, claiming the land belongs to them. They demand the group leave, and even insist that Yellowhawk's body be moved. Joseph shows the official documents from the government, but the men refuse to accept it. Guns are drawn, and another violent clash erupts. The fight ends with all 4 ranchers dead, but victory comes at the highest cost. Every member of Yellowhawk's family falls except for the youngest, Little Bear. Joseph's remaining soldier also loses his life. With sorrow weighing heavy on them, Joseph and Rosalie perform a Cheyenne sky burial, placing each body on a raised wooden platform, facing the open sky. According to belief, this helps the spirit return to where it belongs. After everything they've been through, Rosalie makes a life-changing decision. She chooses to adopt Little Bear and plans to take him to Chicago. The long and painful journey has reshaped her, and she refuses to let the child face the world alone. As the miles pass, Rosalie begins to see Joseph differently, not just as a hardened soldier trained to survive and follow orders, but as a man capable of compassion, someone who has learned to carry both duty and empathy at the same time. Joseph undergoes his own transformation. For years, he saw native people as enemies, shaped by war and loss. But after traveling with Yellowhawk and witnessing the pain shared between both sides, he finally understands the truth. Everyone in this land has suffered. Everyone has buried loved ones because of a conflict fueled by hatred, pride, and fear. By the end of this mission, Joseph makes a silent choice. His final act as a soldier is not violence, but mercy. He breaks the cycle of oppression he once helped enforce. When the moment comes to say goodbye, Rosalie thanks him with deep sincerity. Their paths seem to separate, and Joseph hands her a book about Julius Caesar. He hopes that little Bear, despite his difficult beginning, will grow up believing in himself and dreaming beyond the limits placed on him. But as the train prepares to leave, something shifts in Joseph. Watching Rosalie and the boy step aboard, he realizes the journey is not over. Rosalie still carries deep emotional scars, and little Bear will need guidance in a world where he is now an outsider in his own land. So the moral of the story is sometimes the deepest wounds come from hatred passed down through generations, and healing only begins when someone is brave enough to stop the cycle, even if it costs everything.